Hi there, I'm Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor, and welcome to the broadcast here on Money Control. Now, for the past couple of days, in fact, and weeks, we've been having this discussion internally, and everybody who's been following Money Control or has been following several of the advices that come in now on social media, on YouTube as well, has come under a bit of a tension, if one can really call it that. All this thanks to a new guideline that the SEBI is about to roll out. If sources close to SEBI are to be believed, there will soon be guidelines coming out on not just who can give out financial advice, but what can that financial advice actually be? Who are these so-called finfluencers? What is going behind the research when they put out some stuff in front of the public to follow? The influence behind the finfluencers, something that has been talked about much. We've done series of articles on money control as well, talking about how people got scammed. And then, of course, there is the conventional industry on the other side, qualified advisors, qualified RIAs or registered investment advisors who come out and say that, hold on, we go through a series of qualification required for the SEBI to give us a license to work. And who are these new kids on the block really going out and saying, advising, giving tips even so freely and no check on them? Now, this has been a topic of debate for quite some time. So we thought, why not just take it with the key stakeholders? So joining us today, we've got Sharan with us. Sharan is a content creator. He's an angel investor as well. Sharan has a very famous YouTube channel that has about 1.38 million subscribers. Also with us is Pranjal. Pranjal Kamra is also a household name now, and he has about 4.72 million subscribers on YouTube. And then we also have with us Kalpesh. Kalpesh is a full circle financial planner and advisor. He's also an RIA. That basically means a registered investment advisor by the SEBI. Now, right at the onset, before I go into opening comments, etc., there has been much debate at the moment. Just to give you a quick status check, SEBI hasn't come out with the guidelines just yet. But if you look at the indication so far, whether it comes to taxes on influencers and finfluencers, whether it comes to regulations that the world is following, be it China, Australia, be it what the European Union also is doing at the moment. If you keep all of that in account, one thing is clear, that these regulations are coming. The nature of them, however, is much talked about. So before I go into Kalpesh, who has lots to say about what's exactly happening with in the world and how exactly he's dealing with clients in this case, I want to give the first word to actually Sharan and try and understand from him where he sees this debate going. Sharan, very quickly, I speak with lots of influencers, and all of them are divided in a way, from what I heard so far, divided in how they're perceiving this. It's
Right.
teething issues as well. But where do you stand?
Right. So, firstly, I welcome regulation in this space. It is an indication that a higher authority has recognized this as a legitimate profession. Um, Now, I think the first step that SEBI has to come out is with how do you actually define financial advice? Because today, finance content or financial advice it covers a broad range of topics, right? For example, me, I talk about tax, I talk about money psychology, I talk about budgeting, I talk about insurance. So there is a wide range of topics when it comes to finance. I think so. It's interesting that you also pointed out what is happening in Australia and China. So the way they have defined financial advice is anything related to directly talking about purchasing a stock or securities or a unit in a mutual fund. So when you talk about a particular company's stock, or when you're talking about a particular unit of a particular mutual fund, and we want to take them by name, right? The regulatory authority of Australia and China have said that that kind of advice requires certification or license. So that is how they have defined financial advice. So I think the first thing that we need to look at is how do you define that in the first place. So it'll be interesting to see how
Hmm.
SEBI defines it.
You're right, actually, because the European Securities and Market Authority, which came out, was one of the first big world initiatives that came out with guidelines. In fact, they've done that not just for influencers, but even people who are writing about health, which is very, very crucial. Again, something that touches people's life directly. And they've not just have don't just have a clear definition of what is investment recommendation. They also have consequences, which I found very interesting. They also mention that in case there are violations, what exactly are going to be the fines and consequences on that person, which I think
Right.
is what everybody has really been. And when I say everybody, I mean people like Kalpesh and a lot of people who've lost their money on scams have been talking about, to say that there is no accountability. I think that's where the whole debate really started. That people, and while you have, well, and finfluencer is going to do what the name suggests, it is influence. There is
Right.
always going to be that factor, right? So, how do you create accountability? How do you make this a safe space for people? I like Sharan's comments on saying that it is welcome, but the nature, we'll get into that in a little bit as well. Pranjal, your thoughts?
Oh, I totally welcome it. I think it's delayed. It should have come in much earlier. Absolutely required because, we need to understand that how financial advice is delivered. These days, most people listen to what influencers are saying on social media and following that. So, the major source from where people are getting financial advice, you need to regulate that. If 8 years ago you brought in a regulation to actually regulate from where financial advice was coming back then, so 2013-14 RIA regulations came in because offline was the primary medium through which advice was delivered. And in its clarification, magazines and newspapers and journalists were specifically exempt from it as long as it's not premium. So back then it was well covered. All your bases were covered. Now it's delivered through social media. Either you include it in the existing framework, expand the framework, or modify the regulations, or you bring in a new regulation. Because otherwise, everyone who's registered as an RIA, like us, my company is registered. It makes no sense to get registered. If you follow a set pattern, if you follow strict guidelines to get registered, and everything can be done here online with virtually no one looking at you. So I think it makes a level playing field and also a need of the hour.
Yeah, actually, I like the mix of the panel that we have today, because let me break some news to our audience. I don't think a lot of people know that actually Pranjal is registered himself. He is an RIA. He went through that entire guideline. He's a corporate RIA from what I know. So his company is registered. So he's somewhere in the middle between what Sharan does and what Kalpesh does. And he's trying to say that, make a space for responsible work, even in social media, and perhaps move with times. If the forum and the platform has become social, people like us have moved out of TV studios and come out and interacting with people on platforms where it is accessible, where people enjoy talking and interacting, then why not do it there, but do it now and do it perhaps quickly. Kalpesh, I saved you for the last because I know you have lots to say on this subject. So shoot away. And firstly, also for our viewers at the moment, Kalpesh is a RIA, and I keep saying this word again and again because it's important to understand. He's a SEBI registered investment advisor, and not everybody gets that tag in the country, right? Not, in fact, just to give you a number, overall in India, there are about 1,500 people like Kalpesh. There's a very thorough check that goes behind giving people that license to actually advise and give you recommendations, perhaps, and study your portfolio and let you spend your
Never done
money and
so much
invest your
paperwork
money.
in my life. Never done so much paperwork in my life. It's insane.
Yeah, yeah, I know. That's a different story. Let's not go there. That's a different debate altogether. But Kalpesh, over to you. How do you see this business of influencing impact people and lives?
Thanks, Sorul, for having me, and great to be with Pranjal and Sharon. In fact, I was thinking of, my first line, what should it be? And I think at the very last moment, thanks to Pranjal for stepping in and giving me that first line, the paperwork to become an RIA is insane. I think that sums it up, that what goes into the making of an RIA who's giving, registered, valid, legal, advice authorized by SEBI. And exactly the reason when he said that the paperwork is insane, it's a comprehensive, very, very cumbersome type of a process to first of all get to become an RIA, whether you are an individual RIA or a corporate RIA, and more
Hmm,
importantly, sustain it. I think that
hmm,
shows the commitment which RIAs have towards fulfilling their profession with whatever the requirements of SEBI are. So that is probably also been a deterrent. The paperwork, the all the obstacles which come, or all the requirements, compliances which we have to do on a day-to-day basis to upkeep our license and our advisory model intact. So that once
correct.
people hear
Hmm,
that we want to become an RIA, and when they go through this entire list of things, many of them go on the back foot and just say that no, I think we are better off where we are, thereby finding the easier route. So I think Pranjal, by becoming a corporate RIA, he's done himself and everybody who we advise in the world of good. So that's great, Pranjal.
hmm,
Congratulations to you. And coming to this main aspect, Sonal, which we are talking about, is that let's understand where does SEBI come from, and what stage are we in today as an economy, and with concept of awareness of finance, because that's what we are trying to do, whether you call it a influencer or whether you call it an RIA. Basically, the purpose is to spread awareness and make the country financially literate and commit less mistakes or probably no mistakes in our financial journey. Okay, that's been the endeavor, and SEBI stands
hmm,
for investor protection and investor interest. So that's the fulcrum of the whole thing. Now, when we have evolved, in fact, the SEBI RIA regulations came way back in 2014, and they were moving along, in a very slow and steady manner. Not much was picking up till
hmm,
2020, when it was really bifurcated into segregation of distribution and advisory. So that, I think, set the ball rolling, and the entire exercise became very, very cumbersome. So people like
hmm,
us, like what you said, 1,500 people, when we are undergoing that grind, we are standing up to our daily educational levels to be upkept. We have to give exams on a 3-year basis and keep our license intact. We have to go through audits, and then when we see that we have these whatever influencers and all these people, just chatting anything on the social media platforms just to
hmm,
grab eyeballs or to get their follower counts on a higher level. I think that's where
hmm,
you literally start, your blood boils. And SEBI is completely cognizant of this fact that there's a lot of misguidance going on. There's a lot of naming of products, and Sharon, I think, was very right in saying that you don't have to name products; you have to just classify asset classes. You have to create a financial awareness. So, due credit to Sharon and to Pranjal for creating this awareness. But the problem is that this is the good part of it. If you go into the depth of it and you see what level of whatever so-called influencers they talk about and what type of misguidance goes, that's when people who are doing this job ethically literally feel very sidelined, that we are doing things, keeping our heads down, keeping a low
Hmm.
profile, having a follower count of not more than 5,000. Forget the
But
million.
Kalpesh, can I interrupt you over there? When you say people like us who are doing it ethically, are you saying influencing at the moment is unethical?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm absolutely not saying influencing is unethical, because it again goes into the larger framework of, in every field you will find the good and the bad. Okay, I've never said
Hmm.
that influencers, they are doing a fabulous job. I've heard, I follow many of them, and they're doing a
Hmm.
fabulous job. But there's also the dark side to it. So let's understand that, and we all have seen what that dark side is. And all this new
Hmm.
generations going and getting into unregulated products. I'm not even talking about the equity part of it, because equity is still a recognized asset class. Okay, it's
Hmm.
regulated equity. It's how you deal in
Hmm.
equity what sets you apart. Okay, so that's a different matter altogether. I'm talking about people talking haywire things about unregulated products, trying to give a logic to it, that why should the entire fraternity get into all these products. The level of greed which is offered there, showing returns which are obnoxious, and telling people to get into it, and that's the end of the world. There is no other option into it.
Got it.
So these are the
Got it.
things which are really hurting the sentiment of the public. And I'll end this opening note on one remark. See, everybody, including the financial institutions, the influencers, the mutual fund distributors, stock market analysts, everybody has played their part in the last decade, I would say, to bring India
Hmm.
where it is today. Today, I'm just giving one simple example, that we have mutual fund SIPs at 13,000 crore per month, which has withstood the fury of the FIS selling, and we have still held our own in the markets. Now, all that is not the effort of one person; it's the culmination of the regulator, the
I
advisors, the
agree.
distributors, ethical financial advisors, influencers. Everyone has played their bit. Now we don't want to give it away on a plate, that other countries have suffered and they're seeing their downfall. We don't want to give it away on a platter when our country, our economy is looking at the top. So this is the
Hmm.
main purpose that it should be regulated. And hats off to Pranjal that he's taken up that corporate RIA. Hats off to Sharon for creating all the awareness and the creative ads, what creative content what he does. I, in my
Yeah.
small way, make a lot of
I
content.
think Kalpesh is making some yeah. I think Kalpesh is making some very, very important points, and it is not just about his profession. It's not about his business getting impacted. It's about country as a whole where we've come, and very important to see India's journey on this. But I have a flip side to India's journey on this. So of course, we know that in the past 2 years, since the pandemic hit us, financial markets and literacy on the whole took a whole new interest, right? Like the everybody sitting at home became a retail investor's demats account opened up, boom, boom, boom. Everybody is on weekends when we catch up amongst friends and even metros. We're about कौन से stock में invest करें, right? We're about ये वाले SIP में डालना है. पूरा सैलरी कैसे सेव करें बाकी चीजों का so that the expenses are out but salary should go in investment. So on the whole, never before has finance been spoken about in the way it is being spoken about right now, which is what has led to the rise. There was a need, right? There was a need that led to this. Also, the flip side is that even after this today, I was looking at a statistic because I take deep interest in financial literacy of women at least, where India is perhaps at its lowest compared to the world. We don't talk about it. We find the process cumbersome. We find the paperwork, give me anything but paperwork. I'm one of those people, right? I want to start a new channel and playlist saying I hate paperwork and only talk about what are the means in which I can sort of, bring it down. So there is a clear need, but is this the correct way to go forward? And has the time come for SEBI to define some very clear rules? And when I say that, I want to pick up specific examples. And Pranjal, you know, I was looking at your channel before we got on to here. You put out this video which has got some 400K views, by the way, more than 4 lakh views. It is about the best funds of 2023, right? I want to move to a bit of a nuance here. When you are talking to people about the best funds, you, of course, are certified by the SEBI. So that's lovely to know. But do you think what defines influence, or what defines giving advice and tips to people? There is a bit of a nuance. And as we speak, by the way, our YouTube chat is blowing up. All Sharan and Pranjal's fans are fighting amongst each other, and Kalpesh is also getting a few blows over there. And there are lots of debates. So please keep sending in your questions. I'll pick them one by one. But Pranjal, to you first. What defines influence? What defines how? Where do you draw the line really over here?
Right. So very good question. I'll pick up from where what Sir was talking. One, yes, finfluencers have played a huge role, but finfluencers also need to realize that we have been compensated good enough for it. I see both sides of it, the RIA side of it from my company's role, and the influencer side of it from what I do on YouTube. I know which one is more lucrative. So, any influencer saying that he or she is doing it for financial literacy, that is a purpose. But what keeps us going and what keeps in bringing more and more creators is because it's highly lucrative. Brand deals, advertisements, promotions, well-funded fintech startups rolling out deals for us, all of that is lucrative. That keeps us going, to be very honest. And when that keeps us going, we need to understand what are we doing. It feels very good that we have millions of followers, people are following us, but actually it's lucrative, in which is why we're doing, and that is where the need to segregate comes. See, I'm all for that. You say that, for example, I use, for example, Zerodha to invest. Now, if I like it, if they're offering me a deal, I use it personally. I like the product. I can tell people that, I use Zerodha, probably you should too. It's good, which is fine, because I'm telling them about a platform, about an aggregator or a platform. I'm not, so it's basically tech advice. In a way, it's a tech advice. Use this app, and not a finance advice. So as long as my finance advice is independent and my tech advice is sponsored, it's fine. The problem arises when the finance advice is not independent. Invest in this particular fund, invest in this particular stock, crypto. There are IPOs, and I get a lot of those offers. IPOs offer to pay us in lakhs for telling that please say this is a good IPO, and which is why we see hundreds of times of oversubscriptions in IPO. And you notice some of the creators, the content is exactly the same, because the content is provided to them by the the PR team or whoever is concerned. I don't know who's concerned. So things like these, your advice cannot be sponsored. Tech platforms can be sponsored.
Yeah, but Shannon, would you take up that money to talk about an IPO and to let people know about an IPO?
Well, actually, I have been offered money not for IPOs, but for promoting a particular scheme of a mutual fund, right? And right now, there are no guidelines against that. So many mutual fund companies are approaching finfluencers for that. But I am, in the absence of guidelines, what do? I see what is the next best thing. So there is something known as the celebrity guidelines when it comes to promoting mutual funds. So now that says that celebrities are only supposed to promote mutual funds at a industry level, not at a scheme level, right? So I follow that. So I've never ever promoted a mutual fund scheme. And Pranjal was you just talked about Pranjal's video about the best mutual funds for this year, and I've been watching his content for the past 4-5 years. That's his very famous video which I watch every year. And this year when I watched it, I was happy to know that half of the recommendations he made was something that even I found out through my own research. I was happy that okay, it's matching with what a registered investment advisor is saying. But even then, I will not make content on it saying, okay, these are the best mutual funds. Invest in this particular mutual fund. He can, because he is an RIA. I will not do it because I'm not an RIA. So to answer your question, no, I will not accept money when it comes to direct promotion of a particular investment product. Almost all the promotions that I have done is what Pranjal said, is about promoting a tech platform, a platform which enables investment. You do not say invest in this. You say this is the platform which helps you to invest in this. That's how you
Right.
pitch it. You cannot directly tell
Right.
them this is a good investment product, invest in this.
But there's a flip side to that, right? I get it. You are saying, in some way, very broadly, that we separate financial literacy from financial advice, right? And
Right.
broadly, those are the two buckets that you're looking at. And as long as you're in the realm of literacy, it should be working. And,
Absolutely.
anyways, we should keep that in mind once they go out, right? But what about platforms? I'm going to say the C word now, on crypto.
Okay.
What about promoting platforms on crypto which have crashed and dunked in millions
Right.
and millions of money? How does and where does one draw the line? There are some very famous influencers, some dear friends of mine also, who have gone out and say advocated for Walt and others, and then look what happened.
Right.
Sharan?
So I'll answer that question. All right.
Yeah.
So the C word that you're talking about. See, the way that I look at it when it comes to cryptocurrencies, again, I never promote invest in Bitcoin or invest in Ethereum by its name. Right? You talk about it as an asset class. Now, if you ask me personally, yes, I have an allocation in cryptocurrencies. Right? Just because the market has fallen so much doesn't mean it's a bad investment. No, it's a new asset class which has not matured enough yet, and this has already happened in 2018, right? And I was already a part of that cycle, right? But not many people were participating in crypto back then. But the boom happened again when the pandemic happened, and obviously the reason why people are investing is, it is not because a certain influencer has said invest in this particular thing. I think there has been a big role played by news channels and media as well, because we are always sensationalizing stories about a person who becomes a millionaire through cryptocurrency. It's not just influencers, even the media channels are doing it. Nobody likes to hear about a story about a guy who became a millionaire in 20 years by investing in mutual funds. Nobody likes to hear those kind of stories. So
Mhm.
hearing that this person became a millionaire in 1 year through cryptocurrencies, all these stories have been sensationalized. So I think it's a multitude of all of these things which had led to so much of participation in crypto. And obviously, when the crypto markets tanked, everybody is pointing the fingers at influencers. But now coming to the Wald incident.
Sarah,
Uh,
let me say something over here, because I did a show for the longest time on crypto, and I think it's
yeah,
very important to mention. And I think one of your fans is only now grilling me on this, and he says this is Speedy Singh, who has written in a chat that why only influencers will be scrutinized. What about finance-related TV channels or
right,
TV channels shows regarding finance? Don't you think they should be under the radar of regulation as well? Now,
right,
Speedy Singh doesn't know, but let me educate our audiences at least, that TV channels have a very clear guideline, especially those covering financial news, on what they cannot say. They also have guidelines on who they can bring on the channel and who they cannot. Forget all of that. We, as employees now of an organization which even has one foot in finance, have to sign agreements within saying that dependent that we will not be advocating for shares and stocks, etc., that we are invested in. We have to make full disclosures, and it's a lot of paperwork. So I totally sympathize with Kalpesh over here in giving out lots and lots of details to the government to absolutely be clear and have a clear conscience and follow the law of the land, which basically tells you that there are certain guidelines that one has to follow. So in TV channels, there will be always a disclaimer. Our shows also start with the disclaimer. Every piece that goes out on cryptocurrency, even on Money Control, has that disclaimer. We always carry that. So we are very particular. So but TV also comes in sort of a partial regulatory guideline. It's not completely, or media on the whole, not completely regulated by the government. It has sort of points where it is self-regulated and the rest of it. But I'll let Kalpesh sort of come in here. Kalpesh, you've heard both of them. All right things are being said over here. But again, I'm just trying to come to the point where I'm trying to understand. So the bottom line here is going to be, how does SEBI, I actually have twofold question here. How does SEBI define the good finfluencers from the bad finfluencers, the good influence and the bad influence? How will they define that? And second, my biggest problem is execution. It's this big world, of web and Web3 and God knows what all at the moment that the government has no clue about. Their issues have mostly been reactive. How does one get down to actually implementing this?
Yeah, so that's quite a tricky question and a mammoth task, I think. But the best part is they're set out on the road to finding a solution for this. And I think probably these guidelines, whatever they're going to come out, are going to come out in the best interest. And at least it will be a start. And I'm not saying, and knowing SEBI, they will always be, flexible and keep changing it. So it's not going to be something which is, going to be constant. So they'll look at the situation and they'll always mold and remold it, looking at how things are panning out. So I think everybody should be ready for a quite I think volatile ride as far as these regulations go. And the thing which I think SEBI would be having in mind is that whatever decisions if the individual is taking based on certain people who are not either licensed or regulated or qualified, and are just come out or sprung out of anything, and for whatever benefits they might be deriving, and if they take their advice or execute certain things and they land up in a soup, I think what
Hmm.
SEBI would be doing is simply saying that it was your call. It's always the concept of buyer beware. So I think that type of a
Hmm.
thing is probably going to happen. And I think what type of actions or what type of do's and don'ts for the influencers to be validating an advice, I think that's best left to SEBI on how they will be classifying those people, under what umbrella they will be putting them, what they will be calling them. I think it's completely up to SEBI's discretion and their own judgment. I think they are more sharper and brighter brains sitting there rather than us.
Hmm. Pranjal, there's an advice that has come in. Why don't you take that? There's somebody who goes by the handle of Har Har Mahadev who has written that how about certificates and licenses for influencers?
Well, legally speaking, that's a little difficult because we are not directly entering into a contract with our audiences. We don't know who they are and we are not charging them. So thereby, there's no contractual relationship. And in absence of which, curtailing someone who wants to speak something about on social media is actually, violation of freedom of speech if you don't allow them. So rather than that, I think what can be done is one, I think full and fair disclosures. There could be a set pattern that in this format, you need to disclose this. Because as Sir said, it's always a case of buyer beware. But what guidelines will do is to ensure that the buyer is in a position that he can decide for himself. There is
Hmm.
enough supply of correct. So, example, if you buy a food packet, if it's healthy for you or not is decided by the ingredients which needs to be disclosed. So by disclosing the ingredients, the buyer is in a position whether it's healthy for him or her or not. So I think
Hmm.
this needs to happen here as well. There needs to be a set of regulations that tell us what to disclose and what format, and regardless of your, because the regulations has to be such that it's scalable and applicable to everyone. If you bring in registration and things like that, then when do you register? When he or she has 10,000 followers, or when he or she is just starting, when to decide to register someone. So it has to be so simple and applicable that it applies to everyone in an easy way. And
Yeah.
second, I think a smarter way could be self-regulation. So
Hmm.
RIAs, there's this recently a self-regulatory body came in, and I see increase in interaction. Similarly, say a self-regulatory body, various industry stakeholders. For example, if Sharan is in the board and I'm doing something wrong and he calls me, Pranjal, I'm in the self-regulatory body and you're violating the guidelines. More than public backlash, I'm concerned because an industry peer is calling me, talking to me, and telling me to stop something, which has a great
Interesting.
impact. So these two
Interesting.
aspects in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so 2 points on what you said actually. One, this having a self regulatory body of influencers, I think the time for that has come, by the way. Anyways, influencers and finfluencers, we're a big group and everybody keeps interacting. So there has to be some sort of synergy there and some sort of regulations coming in before the need for the government to actually crack down. I think that's where it comes in. But when it comes about the point that both of you have been making, Kalpesh and Pranchal, on buyers beware, there's also the aspect of responsibility, no? Like that's where it comes in. And the third point here is, and Sharon, come in on that. I'm actually quite torn when it comes to this on putting licenses, on the question that was asked earlier on putting licenses and certificates, because then I feel, where's the story of India?
Right.
Why are we stopping a small, I mean, a guy from a small town in Kanpur, UP, to tell his financial journey? Why does he have to? Anyways, life is so tough. The
Right.
reason you and I love social media is because anybody can be somebody here. And
Right.
you put a ban on that, then again, you're creating barriers. The whole point, the whole essence and heart of social media goes for a toss.
So this is how I see it. So we all know that barely 3 to 4% of India is actively investing in the markets, right? That's like more than 90% of the people are not even aware of what's there. So I look at this entire thing as a funnel. So this whole of India over here, 96% of the people who don't know, they're not even aware of what options are available to them apart from savings account and fixed deposits. And then there's this bottom 4% of the people who know everything and who are actively searching for stuff by themselves. And I happen to be in this 4% people, and that's how I discovered people like Pranjal, because I was actively typing this sort of stuff and consuming this sort of content. But the remaining 96% of the people are not even going to consume this sort of content because they're not even typing for this, right? So I think where finfluencers fit is that in that bringing those 96% to the
Hmm.
bottom of the funnel, right? And then they discover people like Kalpesh, and then they discover RIS. I mean, if they can afford them, right? But I think that's how the entire journey goes. But if you plug in, saying that only RIS can talk about it, but they're only going to appeal to those 4% of the people. What about the rest 96% of the people? Because this is not something that you have to do only if you have an interest in it. It is something that you have to do non-negotiable.
Yeah, Sharon, can I ask you a question which I've been sort of running or skirting around for a while? How do you? Is there a filter that people like you apply when, say, brands come to you with
Right,
very tempting offers and tell
right,
you to go and talk? I see you do a lot of branded content, right, on your
right,
Instagram and other places, very engaging content, and your two avatars that you come in and all of that, etc. Right? And I see a
right,
lot of brands find engagement and synergy over there. Is there
right.
a personal filter that you apply? You spoke about it earlier, but I want to understand. Uh, you talked about Kalpesh asking for too much money for one post. How much is it? Like some 6 lakh, 7 lakh at times?
Okay, so you have two questions. So one is, how do I do the filtering process, and then how much money is being charged? All right. So here's how I look at it. I'll answer the second question because I think that's what most people are interested in. See, when people are looking at how much money an influencer is making through a post, they're looking at that person as an individual. The numbers that you're quoting, that is numbers which are being charged by some of the top influencers in the country, and they have a huge team that they're working with. There are huge salaries that need to be paid. But
Hmm.
people are thinking that because it's this personal brand, maybe he's pocketing everything and chilling and watching Netflix all day. No, there are
No,
so
what
many
you do with the
expenses.
money is nobody's problem. No, what
Right.
you do on
No.
justification of the money is not the point. The point is there is a charge for a
Huh.
post to say
Right.
exactly what the company wants you to say.
No, there's a mistake there. I'll fight with the company if they're asking me to say something that I don't want to say. Right? I'll tell you the entire process which goes into selecting how I work with the brand. In a month, and I'm sure it's true for Pranjal as well, if not more. In a month, I get around 200 emails from different companies. These are 200 people holding money in their hands saying, "Take it, say this." That's how it is. From those 200 people, I select four. Now, obviously, I don't have time to go through all 200, so I have a very strong QC team which shortlists companies for me by looking at the background, by talking to investors, talking to the CEOs. Once that is done, if it's a new company, if it's something that I'm already using on my phone, then I have no problem because I like using that app personally. So I will no problem promoting it. But if it's something that I've not heard of before, then what I'll do is I'll take one step further. I'll probably invite the founder to my home. We'll have a chat. We'll talk. Then I'll learn more about the company. If I'm not convinced, I'll probably ask them to set up a call with me with the product managers as well. Then I'll talk to other industry experts in my circle. There are CAs and CFAs who have the licenses, so I'll talk to them about what they think about this product. So this sort of entire due diligence goes, and finally I work with four brands, right? So that's how the entire process works. Now coming to the final thing. Now let's say I decide to work with them. Now let's say I give them a script. Now they will obviously want as much downloads or investments or whatever as possible. So they will have some sort of a script. This is what I tell them. If I'm going to say that, I'm going to charge you double. And they always say no. You tell whatever you want to say. right? So that's the trick I use. I'm like, if you want to say what you need to say, I'm not going to work with you. I'll charge you double, right? And then I can tell whatever I need to tell. I'll be unbiased. I'm not going to follow their script or guidelines. Granted, this might not be true with all influencers who do not have that sort of negotiating power, but I
Sharan,
will.
can I say this? Are you in a position to do this today with a million followers and subscribers in your pocket?
Right.
The journey at the start must have been different, no?
Yeah, journey at the start was definitely different, but in the beginning it was just me trying to figure out how to negotiate, how to work with brands, who to work with. But I was fortunate that right from the beginning, as soon as I hit 10,000 followers, I was reached out by a guy, a 22-year-old kid, and he's now the founder of Finet Media. I was his second client, so I was fortunate enough to be represented by an agency right from the beginning. So he set up all the entire team and the entire due diligence process and all of that, and then we work together on how to kind of work with the brands, what kind of brands to avoid. Even now I tell him, don't accept deals from brands who are asking to promote a particular mutual fund scheme. Don't do that with any influencer, because he's my close friend of mine. So I tell him. So some in certain sense of way, we're already self-regulating, because this company that I'm talking about, Finet Media, already represents maybe close to 80-90% of influencers, and we have these annual events and stuff like that. So in a way, we're already kind of self-regulating ourselves as to what has to be told and what has to be not told. But this is for Instagram. YouTube is a completely different ball game. I'm not really familiar with the influencers who are there. I mean, I'm familiar with Pranjal, of course, but there is a lot more people on YouTube which I am not aware of, because they are not on Instagram. Not many people know them. So I don't know how the self-regulation is happening there. But on Instagram, I can tell you, without a shadow of doubt that at least I've not seen a single content creator on Instagram who has directly saying, invest in this stock, or directly saying, purchase this mutual fund. Maybe one or two instances I've seen, but that's out of maybe 10,000 pieces of content I've watched since the past 2 years.
Yeah, yeah. Kalpesh, you've been listening to the whole thing quite, patiently. I want to understand, say Pranjal can do this today, Sharan can do this as well, and it's likely, right? They have a series and they have responsibility. They've built a brand for themselves. But recently on Money Control, we did a story. My colleague Asha had done some digging, and we discovered a massive scam. The scam was being done in the name of the finfluencers. So these were people who were faking to be, say, Pranjal and Sharan, making their Discord and WhatsApp accounts and asking people, give me 1,000 bucks, I'll tell you what to do with your 10,000 bucks. Or there was another scam which said, okay, invest 10,000 with us, we will make it 20,000 in 2 weeks. Okay, invest this thing and whatever. And in the name of these some good influencers, a lot of this scam was running. Now today,
No, Sonal, I'm
this
sorry to interrupt, but
yeah.
this is a very close thing to my heart. Roughly, we have filed 4 cases of this where people have extracted anywhere between 50,000 to 1 lakh rupee, impersonating themselves to be someone from Phenology, because we also have an RIA. So what they do is go to the SEBI website, check this is a valid company and things like that. And I never thought this would happen, but a couple of humans are actually in jail because they did this, and we had to take action despite repeated warnings. So it's very
Oh,
common.
that's
And in fact,
yeah.
on YouTube, another kind of scam is very common. And we must have blocked, I think, thousands of IDs wherein you block someone and the next minute they again create a YouTube account with my TP, with my name, and a fake Telegram number. And this has been happening with all influencers on YouTube. Thousands of either bots or person replying to comments on our videos impersonating us. So it's tough. I mean, cost of removing impersonation is also huge.
Yeah, and Pranchal, I'm very glad that you actually took action and something came out of it, because I'm a personal victim. There's somebody who's, by the way, as we speak, there's a channel on YouTube with my name and another one which says it's me and goes on to say I don't know what. There's another one impersonating Money Control as well, right? And we keep blocking them, and we keep asking. Even when we go to the ministry, the point is there will always be a new URL. and another thing that will pop up. So it's very difficult to handle. Perhaps one of the reasons why this is the need of the hour. Again, it brings me to a previous question: execute कैसे होगा? सब बात हो जाएगी, everybody will agree, कैसे execute होगा? तो कल्पेश बताइए कुछ हमें, something, some
So,
pearls of wisdom.
no, so basically, what Pranjal is saying or what Sharan is saying, even in the RIA fraternity, we've heard of almost, if not less than at least 15 to 20 cases of impersonation happening. Now, let's understand the crux of it. Why is it happening? Because ultimately it's that one word, which is that quick money, get rich quick type of schemes. And that is lingering absolutely in people's mind. And like what Sharon said, that people don't want to get rich through the mutual fund route, but they want to get rich in 1 year, which is a bitter truth, as easy as said. So that is the main crux of problem where this whole thing emanates. And believe me, SEBI is completely cognizant of this. उनसे कुछ नहीं छुपा हुआ है. It's just a matter of time when the rod will strike. Now, the best way, in fact, one of the solutions here is that responsible influencers, ethical influencers, in quote, I think could be the first, lot of people getting, recognized by SEBI, which could be the first step forward. So, for example, I'm sure people like Pranjal and Sharan are miles ahead than my thought process in this field of social media. That probably you have, when you see a movie, that there comes a disclaimer in the beginning that all the events are highly coincidental, all that stuff when we see a movie. Similarly, when there is their own, representation or their own video going out or something, on the YouTube or the social media, there is an ethical license or something which is showing that this is the true Pranjal, this is the true Sharan, whose content is there with a set of SEBI nominated nomenclatures which they have to follow. It might not be as comprehensive as an RIA, but at least that nameplate or that tag or that checklist, which could be preceded by their own video, and the video then follows. I think that would at least give one filter, one type of driving license, I would say, for the video or the thing to go ahead. And that would be little bit difficult to impersonate or to get into the thing. There could be a hologram or something which SEBI could come up with. No, I'm just probably stepping into SEBI shoes. Again, they would do what they want to.
No,
But
I think if RBI can launch e-rupee and government can engage in blockchain to run toll plazas in this country, to give out IIT and IIM certificates, I think this can be done. So I'm not
yeah,
worried about
yeah,
the scope, and this
I
is
just
now the
have
time it should be when it
one.
should be done as well. Sorry,
Now,
Kalpesh.
I have one
Hmm.
more thing to add here. That what happens is then, and I'm sure Pranjal being an RIA has encountered that, is that the advice given on a personal level by any financial advisor. Let's keep the RIA terminology set aside right now. Okay, let's say a financial advisor and a social media influencer. The difference is vast when you come in front of a client. So talking to a social media platform and talking in front of a client, we have clients who come and shed tears in front of us. You feel, you empathize, you sympathize. Your tones change when you talk about it. You will ever, not ever even think about the monetary aspect, at least when he's in front of you. Obviously, everything bottom line is money. But the point is that you will be a different person when you're facing a client one to one, and your entire approach will change. And that is what people need to understand. So, in our field of, I'm a CFP, okay, in our field of certified financial planning, we say that this is personal financial planning and not financial planning, because everyone's profile is personal, it's different. So it cannot be generalized. So even if, with due respect, even if you say five best schemes or five best stocks or five best policies, it is just a very bland summary. Today, 50% of the people might not be in a position to even invest 100 rupees SIP, not because they are not able to invest, because they're stuck in the malaise of wrong mis-selling of insurance policies,
Hmm.
and they don't have a cash flow even to put in anything more because their mindset has been rubbed the wrong way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So who will remove those stains? Who will remove that dirt?
Let me take that a little forward by bringing in an aspect of complaints and complaint redressal. right? Even when you are certified by the SEBI, and Kalpesh was telling me this a little earlier, that even now, even with clients that he deals with personally, etc., SEBI has made a provision where you can go and complain even against them. Even they might have
Yeah.
done everything in their best capacity, there is. But who will
So
hold these people who give stock tips on social media accountable? And today, if I
exactly.
have
So
been wronged, if I have been, where do I go? Who do I go and even approach? What law applies? Which body should I go and speak with? What is the evidence that I can keep? In fact, I'm going to do a full video now just for people to ask them to keep their, how to ensure that if you're engaging on social, how to keep the evidence intact, in fact, right? So for me, I think addressal of any of your grievance, that itself is a deterrence. And I'm going to start taking quick closing comments on that note. Pranchal, why don't you go first?
Oh, definitely. And I totally agree with Sir here. I have experienced it on social media. When you get, say, you mentioned 4 lakh views, sometimes in our routines, it becomes just a number. But when you meet someone personally, it's never the number. It's always the human. So that is the problem in social media. No matter how much we try to avoid it, has happened with me a couple of times. So I accept it. Regarding complaint redressal, yes, I mean it's very, very important because what happens. The local police, to be very frank, does not understand these problems. They will. So we think of two ways to redress common consumer problems: police and consumer forum. But these platforms don't cover it. And when you go to SEBI, the first thing, because of the current framework, the SEBI customer care call center would tell you that these entity is not registered. So SEBI expects people to understand, and SEBI believes that people will go to registered people to seek advice. And if those registered people do something wrong, there's scores to, go to and complain. But, even SEBI says that be let the buyer beware. If you're going to a person who's not regulated, then we can't help you because he's not under our ambit. Then you have to go to the local police, and then that doesn't help. So I think, when specifically in terms of money, when you're paying someone, please, if it's free financial education, consume all you want. But when you are paying someone, please make sure there's this SEBI website. It has transparently displayed everyone who's licensed by SEBI. So you can see Phenology Ventures, you can see Search Company, anyone who has the license to give you stock advice for a fee is available on the SEBI website. Please cross check. There's one contact and one email that website also mentions. Please make sure that you are verifying by that phone number or email that it's the same person or same entity you are talking to, and no other number. So these are small measures through which we can ensure.
या शरण, सारे
Right.
अपने वीडियोस में आपको डाल देना चाहिए इन्वेस्टमेंट्स आर सब्जेक्ट टू मार्केट रिस्क, प्लीज रीड द ऑफर
Yeah.
डॉक्यूमेंट,
So
सारे
the thing
सारे
is,
वीडियोस में डाल देना
I
चाहिए.
never I never talk about that. I never give stock tips. I never talk about. So there are two main perceptions in an average Indian investor's mind. Number one is investing means stock market. That's the only thing that's the first thing which pops up in their head. Like when you think about cricket, first thing you might think about is Virat Kohli. So when it comes to investing, they think the most important thing that's stock market. But there is so much more when it comes to finance, and that's the gap that I addressed. Talking about insurance, boring topics like insurance, taxation, money psychology, asset allocation. So I talked about these sort of things, right? And most people didn't even realize that okay, this also exists in finance, right? So that's the first misconception, the first perception which people have in their mind. The second perception which people have in their mind is that is something that cannot be done by them, whatever they do. And the responsibility even inevitably goes to the profession which everybody knows when it comes to finance, that is CA. So they think that the CA will take care of everything. I don't know what this is. I don't understand numbers, so he'll take care of everything. And that I would say is a very large number of people in India who think like that. And I think what influencers have done is, by breaking it down into simpler topics or putting a comedic angle to it, it's like, okay, this is simple and this is important. Maybe I can learn to do these sort of things by myself as well. I don't have to rely on somebody else. And coming to your point about women financial literacy, I'm sure most of the women in your life are kind of given that responsibility to a male figure in their family instead of doing it by themselves. And I hear these sort of stories all the time. So my personal goal of creating content on social media is for people to realize that it is not something that only a select few people on this planet can do. I mean, sure, regulation is required. There are certified people, but it is not such that you cannot learn it. You need to learn at least the basics of it to understand what a person like Kalpesh is even talking about. Otherwise, it's gonna sound like Greek and Latin. So I think that's all there is to about being a influencer and being a content creator. We're the gap between the 96% of the people and the 4% of the people who are with Kalpesh.
Hmm. No, I totally agree with you. But your point on women and finance, it is much of a hype. It is, I see historically in our houses, our mothers, our grandmothers have run households more effectively. If you go back in the rural areas, if you go to hinterlands, you see women play a more active role. Even in the hills, they
Right.
play a more active role physically, mentally, financially as well. So I think it's a bit of a misnomer that
Okay.
has sort of come in. But Kalpesh, last thoughts to you. I see that constantly the theme that is emerging out of even talking to all of you has been that uh, stock tips mat dijiye, but is there a line between personal finance as well? When you talk about credit card policies, when you talk about insurance, when you talk about, say, SIPs, mutual funds, all of it, keep stocks aside because that everybody knows black and white over there, right? Is there a gray area there as well? We are so careful, like you and me, in saying one word also in public because you're worried about violating contracts, etc. Do you think that is also a space that requires regulation?
No, so I divide this into two, three segments. First and foremost, where I started my journey for becoming an advisor and then RIA, whatever it is, was from one word, creating awareness. I think there's an ocean to be filled of awareness in our country. And let alone the figures, what Sharon is mentioning about 4% or 96%, which is factual. But the thing is that there is such a dearth of awareness, and that is internal and external both. So there are so many people who think they know everything, but the problem is they only know products, they don't know their own profile. So that is a big problem, and that is where you require a financial planner. I'm first addressing the need for a financial planner who sees things from a bird's eye view and sees it in an unbiased way without any bias towards any product. Okay, so that is where he would like to see it on a macro level that individual's financial profile. He might be a CA, he might be an insurance policy agent, he might be a mutual fund expert, he might be a stock, but his knowledge is limited to that only. His whole life is in a mess. So he requires, so if you see many of the clients whom we have are also, relationship managers of AMCs and banks.
Hmm.
Those are people who are our clients who are working on a personal financial planning aspect. So that ocean of awareness is huge. And that is a big gap, a big void to be filled. In that, I think women will play a very big role. And in fact, I don't know whether you know about it. I've authored a book called Yours Financially, and that book is all about financial inclusion of women. It's about the story of two couples, and I might not be a great financial influencer, but I'm quite creative in using these things with Bollywood, and Bollywood is my passion. So, in fact, I've tried to create my own bit of financial awareness through this Bollywood type of storytelling, where
Hmm.
the awareness aspect comes out in the open. And what I would like to see here is that
Kalpesh, you
genuinely,
just have to do it on YouTube. You'll become a influencer. यही काम कर रहे हैं
yeah.
सब.
So that was my last line.
आपको
I would like
Instagram
to see.
रील बनानी है.
So I
आप
would
क्या
like to see.
करें? इनके
So,
you should
so, so,
must catch up with the
No, so
rest.
what I'm trying to say. That would be my last, parting note here. Would be that I would like to see more regulated people become regulated influencers, and regulated influencers become more regulated advisors. I think
Yeah.
when a void will be filled between that, I think easily that percentage would easily jump up by 20 to 25% of awareness. And believe
Hmm.
me, when you get awareness in finance, the most important thing in finance, which I feel, is what not to do rather than what to do. If you understand what not to do in finance, I think you've
Hmm.
won the battle, because then
Yeah.
you will know what to avoid, and easily the simple things which you do on a day-to-day basis will do the job for you and enhance your future.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, one
So I
last
think
thing,
that
if you have
was.
time.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to say, I think
Yeah.
Sharan's mind is already working in ideas कि next character का नाम कल्पेश होना चाहिए और वो hoega, and this is how I'm going to do. And I think there's a collaboration coming over here. And you know what? These messages that you're giving out to the
You,
universe
you,
come true.
you owe
And
me, you, Sharon, you owe me some royalty then.
I'll let that happen. Ranjan.
Yeah, so your question regarding credit cards, insurance, and stocks. I think the problem यहाँ पे ना, there's some regulatory confusion as well because IRDA regulates insurance, SEBI regulates mutual fund stocks, and RBI regulates credit cards. So something like ULIP, who regulates that? Does IRDA regulate that? Does SEBI regulate? Because we are under SEBI, so we are not licensed by IRDA. So should we advise on something like ULIP? So there is a lot of regulatory confusion as well. There's no uniform financial advisor that's sort of collectively certified by all three regulators. And then you have the scope where there is an advisor who's licensed by all three in a unified license, and then he can authoritatively speak across classes. So that is something that's missing.
I think that synergy overall has been missing. And since this is happening for the first time in the world of social media overall, and I said this in the beginning, I want to say this again, this is not to just hit out at fin-fluencers. They get more talked about because people's money and their livelihoods are at stake over here, but applies same to health. I would say applies to beauty as well. I would say applies the same to beauty because I now hear of testimonies of people applying something just because they've seen a real trend on it and ended up with bad burns on their face. There has to be responsibility somewhere. And I think that sort of regulation is required at an overarching level. But this has been a fascinating conversation. All we have to do now is wait to see what SEBI does really on this one. And what exactly do they bring out? I hope this process is consultative. I hope they're able to engage with more and more people, something that is already happening in the crypto world, in blockchain at least. I see the government and a full panel engage with the stakeholders very closely to understand the nuances and perhaps then come up with a regulation that will behold all. And like we said in the beginning, be it China, be it Australia, be it the European Securities and Market Authority, there are enough examples out there for SEBI to actually pick this up from and take it forward from there. We can't wait to see what they really come out with, and perhaps we'll catch up again and see how that's going. For now, thank you so much, all of you, Kalpesh, Sharan, Pranjal, for joining us on Money Control. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.